The work session budget meeting of April the 9th, 2024 at the Bel Air Town Hall will now come to order. It is 4:30 p.m. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All right, and we have one motion to change the agenda, which
Yes.
is we do need to delete number 3A. Unfortunately, the presenter is stuck in traffic in Greenbelt and will not be able to be here with us today. So with that amendment, does anyone want to discuss the agenda further? No? All right, in that case, Mr. Krantz.
Do we have a second?
We do need a second, sorry about that. Do I have a second for that amendment?
Second.
Thank you.
To approve tonight's agenda, April 9th, 2024, the Bel Air Board of Town Commissioners Budget Work Session Meeting. Commissioner Rutledge,
Aye.
Commissioner Chismar,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
and Chair Edding.
Aye.
The agenda is approved.
And I also neglected to call the roll, but Commissioner Rutledge
Present.
and Commissioner Chismar,
Present.
Commissioner Taylor,
Here.
and I'm here as the chair, and Commissioner Chance will not be with us this evening. And next on our agenda, we have the Town Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No specific report, other than I may have some comments I want to add to a miscellaneous item later, but for right now, no specific report, ma'am.
All right. So as far as our tentative agenda for the town meeting on Monday, we have a public hearing on Resolution 1227-24, the Town Administrator's Fiscal Year 2025 budget. And then we have under new business, this is a question for you, Mr. Krantz, Resolution 1228-24, Fiscal Year 2025 tentative budget. So we have a 1227 and a 1228.
Yes, that is the next evolution in the step of the upcoming fiscal year budget, and Ms. Moody may have some comments to that.
Nope, that's exactly right. So it starts as the town administrator's budget, and then it moves to your working budget, which is considered the tentative budget.
Okay.
The last or the second public hearing in May, the public hearing's on the tentative budget. And that same night, we'll have a new resolution that will change it to a final budget with any kind of budget amendments.
Thank you for that explanation.
And-
And then, go ahead.
I was going to say materially, the two are the same in terms of what's actually in the document, the town administrator and the tentative, at least for now.
There are no changes
Right,
between the town
okay.
administrator and the tentative. The only changes will happen between the tentative and the final.
All right. And also under new business on our meeting, we will have ordinance 827-24 to amend the town code, chapter 10 boards, commissions, and committees, article 5, committee on the elderly and needy citizens, and section 1020 membership terms of office. We are not?
I don't see that on the
Let me see. Maybe I don't have the latest edition. I do not have the latest edition. There we go. That has also been deleted from the agenda. So now we are down to staffing update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have closed a number of the polls in our police dispatch and police officer recruiting period, and we just posted fresh new positions, so we're actively seeking applicants for the position of police officer. And that can be a lateral, someone who is already a police officer in the state of Maryland that would like to apply to the town of Bel Air. Or we are also entertaining applications for people who are not currently police officers but wish to pursue a career in law enforcement. So we're actively seeking those candidates. Those positions are posted right now, and we are also finishing up some recruiting in regards to our procurement manager. Our network specialist started today, so success. Very happy to report that. And before you is a switching to appointed officials and volunteers. We do have a report for the committee positions that are expiring through August 31st of 2024. So we currently have a vacancy on the Board of Ethics, and there's a pending vacancy pretty quickly here on the Planning Commission. Then we have Cultural Arts, Historic Preservation, and Board of Appeals. We have some vacancies coming up in the next few months, just to bring that to your attention.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Krantz or any further discussion of the staff report?
Yeah, Mr. Krantz, for the Historic Preservation Commission, Mr. Edmeades, that's the architect position, is that right, or something like that? Doesn't one position have to be an architect?
I would have to
No,
defer to Mr. Small.
In a perfect world, all the positions would have a historic or architectural knowledge.
Okay.
But Mr. Edmeades happens to be an architect who's semi-retired.
Right, I know, that's why I was wondering if there was a specific position solely for an or.
No.
No, okay, there's no distinction between any of the 7 positions?
No.
Got it.
As I recall, when we looked at this, the only real requirement is that you sort of have an interest and some knowledge
Right.
in the area.
Okay.
So it was very broad as far as what the requirements would be. Certainly having, an architect on the board is a real plus,
Plus.
but you
Right.
don't, there was no particular background, education, work
Yeah, the way that
history,
the
or anything.
way the purpose reads is it's somewhat broad, and that some people own historic buildings, some people have an interest, some are on, have a degree in architecture or a related field, so it's all kind of
Okay.
all over the place.
Thank you. Any further questions about the staffing update? All right. In that case, our calendar items, April the 11th, 2024 will be Bel Air's 150th anniversary inception date Ring a Bell event at 12 noon, although my calendar says 11:45. I gotta be here and
Right,
get my
find a
spot,
bell.
right? Get my bell. Anything further on that?
No, just please show up a little bit early so we can organize. We're hoping to have a nice little PR opportunity, so a little video and some photos, and then there'll be some pizza afterwards, so a little reward for everybody coming and, crowding the steps of Town Hall to have a nice celebration and recognition of our actual anniversary date, April 11th, 1874. Found it in the state archives just the other day, as a matter of fact, thanks to Dave Anderson, who helped me find that document. So it's absolutely, that is the date.
All right, big day. And April 27th will be Bel Air's 150th anniversary then and now celebration at the Bel Air Armory from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., followed by a concert featuring the Bel Air Community Band and the Bel Air Community Chorus at Samrock Park at 4 p.m. And I know that is another big day in our celebrations. Anything else that we missed on that? All right. May the 1st will be Law Day at Circuit Court Plaza from noon until 1:30 p.m. And that's all the information that I have about calendar items. Anybody have anything else to add?
The tree committee will not be meeting tomorrow night,
Ah,
since they're participating in the opening day for the Bel Air Farmers Market and giving away seedlings.
Oh, nice.
they will be putting lots of trees into little bags and
Yes.
getting those ready for the giveaway. That's pretty time and labor intensive.
Madam Chair, just to expound on Law Day, as a member of the Harford County Bar Association, we encourage the public to come out to the Circuit Court for Harford County on Law Day on May 1st. It's the theme this year that is set by the American Bar Association is Voices for Democracy, and to encourage the public to get out and vote and also have productive, safe discussions concerning political ideas and accepting different views. It's a great sort of holiday. On behalf of HPC, we thank the town for recognizing it and participating in it. So our president will be there, Stephanie Burton Bragg, who took over this year. I'm looking forward to introducing her to you. Yeah, I think Steve's met her once. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out.
It's a beautiful courthouse, and the ceremonial courtroom is truly like a gem. To
Yeah.
have tried cases in that room is really
Yeah.
something,
Yeah,
so.
they're doing some construction in it now, so it's kind of off limits to us, but it'll be outside in the courtyard, and they'll
And
have
that's all
different
beautiful, too.
agencies and Office on Child Support Services, Sheriff's
Mhm.
Office there, so.
Thank
We are-
you.
Madam Chair, we're also doing a proclamation that we will
Great.
need one of the commissioners to do a presentation for us.
All right. We'll look forward to that then. Hope we have good weather. Miscellaneous. discuss the Commissioner's summer meeting schedule for July and August. Traditionally, I think we skip at least one meeting in July and one meeting in August. Would that
Yep,
be correct,
we-
Mr. Hopkins?
We always,
Yes.
yeah,
Good.
we always skip the first meeting in July and the first meeting in August, so we would typically, or traditionally, defer to July 15th would be the town hall meeting in July, and then August 19th would be the town hall meeting in August, with the appropriate work sessions preceding them. Unless
July
there's,
15th and August the 19th.
yeah, skipping July 1st and skipping August 5th.
Because the 1st of July, that week is usually kind of busy because we do have the 4th of July
It
parade.
is, it's
So
very
we could-
busy,
We could continue, we could consider that a meeting maybe, but
yeah.
it's a different time. All right. So
Unless there's any real big scheduling conflicts, that's what we would
that's what I was
confirm
going
in
to ask.
the,
Anybody have any reason we need to meet on those 2 days in July and August now? And actually, the charter only requires us to meet once a month, so, and as often as needed, but the requirement's once a month, so we're still in compliance with that. All right. Next is the Police Department Senior Officer Zachary Miller's memorial sign.
Yes, Madam Chair. Our officers kind of brought this idea to us. It's something to kind of memorialize, honor, and recognize Senior Officer Zach Miller's 43 years of service. As we all know, he passed away suddenly on February 28th. And this sign would be placed right at the leeway coming into the police department entrance. And we've discussed this with Kevin Small, and there's several different colors of signs and meanings for those signs. The green sign is a public road. The blue sign is for private roads and is approved through you, the commission. And there's a black kind of a ceremonial commemorative type of sign. And we thought to kind of like strengthen the way it's memorialized in the archives of the town, it would be kind of nice to have you kind of approve that request, and maybe have some of his family and officers here and do that. So,
I know we've had Kimmy Meissner Way and, there'll be a few that I've missed, but
yeah, so.
I think that's certainly a idea worth considering.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may. Actually, this is different than Kimmy Meissner Way.
Okay.
So this wouldn't be typically something we bring before the Board of Commissioners, but in an effort to honor Zach and memorialize it, we thought we would capture it in the minutes. It would be a nice memory for his family, and then we could do a brief ceremony outside. So typically, we wouldn't have to burden you with this decision. It'd be something that we can make internally, but we wanted to have it in the minutes and recorded in our files for history. Thank you.
I think it's a wonderful way to memorialize his service, 43 years. He gave, an entire lifetime of,
I think it is too. We have some other events to come up that's coming up in the near future to recognize some of the people that helped us with the ceremonies and things. It was a very complex, kind of like very complex dance that we had to
Right.
fix there for him, and we want to make sure we recognize those people that helped us out with that. So that's upcoming also.
it's truly a big undertaking to
Yeah,
put
it's-
on
it
that
is,
kind of a
yeah.
thing, and it turned out very nicely. So I commend you for all the hard work I know you put into that, making
Thank
that
you,
come
ma'am.
off well.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have a question just procedurally. Would it be like a proclamation then, declaring the road here behind the police department going through the parking lot, like a proclamation declaring it, Zachary Miller Way, or would we do it in the form of a resolution to get it into the books, or?
I don't really know.
I'm inclined to believe it should be a resolution, Madam Chair.
Resolution.
There you go.
I can
Resolution.
draft a short resolution then.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want, should I prepare a commissioner agenda for that, or just,
You and I can work
we'll work
together
it
on that.
through? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay.
Sounds good. All right, next we have amending the Bel Air Town Code, Chapter 246, Historic Preservation, 246-9 Appeals. Mr. Small, did you want to?
Yes, last week we took this change in front of the Planning Commission. They really didn't have, and Commissioner Chismark can elaborate if you'd like, they didn't have too much of a problem with it. We also took it from the HPC just as a kind of a courtesy. They had more to say about it. But either way, it's a pretty straightforward change. The information you have in your package won't be included in what you see. Well, one question is would you like to go ahead and introduce this next Monday? I didn't put that
I,
as far
I
as,
would, I don't think it is of, to me, it's a technical correction to something that we tripped across, and we should have our code be in, compliance with the land use article. So I don't see that as that we really have a lot of choice about it, or that it's going to be anything that's going to engender much discussion, frankly.
right. So I'll put that in, well, I'll get a ordinance number from you. Actually, there's going to be 2 ordinance numbers because you have 2 separate chapters in the code you're changing.
Where it mentions it.
But those will come in front of you. I'll probably just put the same agenda item in front of both with a few minor changes. And then the other extraneous information here won't be included in that package.
Okay.
Were they aware that this, we're just trying to make this our code compatible with the state? Did they
Well,
understand that aspect? I read the comments, and it didn't seem like it came across they understood that.
I think it was difficult for them. I wasn't at the meeting. I wasn't at the meeting. I don't know.
I was at the meeting. I was at the meeting, and I explained everything right off the bat about the law, the inconsistency, the conforming to the law, okay? They understood that, and they don't like that. They don't like it one bit. There was extensive discussion about it, extensive discussion between the members, and I want to communicate to the commissioners that, and we did I asked the chair to, can we go ahead and do a poll straight down the line? We did. Every single member was against the amendment. Every single one was. And the reason that they are is twofold. One is they haven't had any appeals. So why fix what's not broken? Number 2, and another way of putting that was, this is a solution to a problem that does not exist. Number 2, their concern was that it is removing the appellate review from local control, and that they wanted the citizens of Bel Air, through their appointed commissions, to have as much local control over these decisions as possible before kicking the can to what is the courts, that they view as not being, and correctly, under local influence or control or representation. So they very much like the system the way it is, very much hate to see it changed. And I promised them I would relate that. It was a substantive and extensive discussion among them. And I, had made it clear about, the law, et cetera. They said, look, ultimately, the way they view it is they'll get to the court if they want to go to the court, but keep it streamlined, keep it simple, keep it under local control, and don't fix what ain't broke.
Are the HPC meetings recorded? No? Okay. All right.
They typically are. Are you talking? They're not on YouTube, but they are recorded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just curious in listening to that conversation. I'm certainly sympathetic to those concerns, but they are best intimated to the Maryland General Assembly when they come back for their 447th general session, I think.
I most certainly made that clear, Commissioner. I did. I made it clear that, as the notes were that the reference to the commentary to the committee notes, et cetera, right in the legislative. I reviewed everything there about that. Look, this is causing some inconsistencies in an approach. Potentially questions remained about could you still have a 2-tiered appellate process, all those things that the General Assembly was going to have to take up. And there were concerns, just generally that, what is the genesis of this? People usually want law changes for some reason, and, I related that my understanding is that it's just studying the differences of cleaning up the code that has been a process that's been ongoing, and trying to jive things together, and didn't think there was any ulterior motives in changing this appellate process. None that I'm aware of.
I agree with them 100%. and maybe we can put this on our list of things to ask as legislative changes. It's really, I'm not sure why I'm assuming the legislature just doesn't go back and take a look at these things. I'm not sure that anybody would have any really strong feelings that it should go to circuit court and should not go to a Board of Appeals, unless there's other jurisdictions that have a different setup where that would be a problem. We could always ask MML to, there's got to be other historic preservation commissions in other jurisdictions. Maybe they would like to join us, and we can all ask the legislature to fix this, because I'm not opposed to having it go to the Board of Appeals. I'm just opposed to having our code tell people, this is the way you do it, when state law says, no, this is the way you do it, and then leaving somebody, stuck in a jam.
I think the issue is that there are other municipalities that have it go to the Board of Appeals, because that's the way the law said it before. They just kind of said zoning board. It didn't say planning commission. So there are several municipalities that continue to operate that way. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I mean, it seems to me, the language of the statute is very clear. It says planning commission. You follow the term. And, I don't know if they understand this, Jim. It didn't seem to be discussed in the minutes that we were provided and the comments that we were provided. But if we are wrong and these people appeal and they go to the Board of Appeals, I would have every right to move to dismiss and say, you're too late. You didn't file your appeal pursuant to that section at the circuit court within 30 days, and as well as I do, that divests the appellant of their right to appeal. And that, I think, is the concern, but it doesn't seem to be something that HPC either heard, understood. I mean, I'm sorry, I was not there, and it was kind of like, I was on the fence, should I go, should I not go? Because I really didn't want to expend the the resources for the town. But, that is, I think they are all very smart individuals, and they would have been able to recognize that. If you don't fix it, there is a possibility that someone's rights are violated, and that's not fair. I think I agree with you, Paula, and I understand their concern that this is always the way we've done it. Unfortunately, as you pointed out, Jake, the General Assembly says you do it this way, and we don't have much say over that. So, if we can certainly try to see if it's changed. I mean, honestly, that note in there has been in there since 2012.
I know.
They haven't bothered to look at it. It seems like they don't care. So
I don't think it's at the top of their list
Exactly.
of priorities, and I understand that.
yeah.
And I understand it's never happened before, but, nothing's a problem until it is, and then there you are. So
Exactly. And I don't want to
I
be
don't
on the
wanna-
other side of that problem.
I don't either.
If I could extend maybe as we go forward with this, if this is something that, because I'm certainly on the fence of, I want local control, and I think that is preferable. It might be something that in having conversations with the Harford County delegation, you could try to see if they would put in a local bill that said in Harford County, the Board of Appeals shall be a permissible intermediate, appellate body, or however you want to word it. But just make it a local bill. Those tend to go through Annapolis a lot smoother, and say that, in Harford County, you can do it this way. If the governing body of the municipality or county says you can do it this way, you can. Those bills tend to pass, not
I think
guaranteed,
that's a great
but
idea.
as our liaison to our state legislators, if that was something that you wanted to say the next time we had a meeting with them, that could be on the docket for discussion in the next session.
I think that's a better way to go, because we don't have to drag anybody else in with us. And I think it would be much quicker and smoother, and, so let them know that we're intending to do that and see if we can't make a change.
So should we hold on drafting 2 ordinances until that conversation at least give it another 15 days or something?
I would like to correct it now rather than let it
Okay.
be for another year.
Right.
Incorrect,
Because-
just in case.
Even if we do get local enabling legislation, it won't be for another year. So I think for now, it's best to correct it with what the law currently says.
Right, and
Yeah.
we're speculating that we will get it corrected at the
Right.
legislature too,
That's the whole
so
thing.
that's the whole thing.
These ordinances are already drafted, so all I have to do
Alright.
is just send them over. to
I
you.
didn't know that. Mr. Small, tipping my hat to you. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right,
Hey, now that we're fully staffed, things are happening
all
faster.
right. Any more on the historic preservation issue? Well, all right, I think we're all heading in the right direction there. All right, amending the Bel Air Town Code, Chapter 165, Comprehensive Plan and Development Regulations, Part 2, Zoning Article 7, Development and Performance Standards, Section 165-52, Open Space and Recreation Fee in lieu of open space.
Yes, so I presented this ordinance to the Planning Commission on Thursday with the help of Mr. Small. We had a very productive, substantive conversation about the provisions included in it. The ultimate recommendation of the Planning Commission was that the change removing the Board of Town Commissioners from the process, as well as the change to the fee schedule to be 110% of the raw land value, they supported those changes. They did not support restricting it solely to the B2 zoning district, but we did have a conversation about what it could look like. And I'd actually encourage my fellow commissioners to go back and watch that section of the hearing. If you haven't, Commissioner Chismar, you don't have to do that. You were there. But Commissioner Rutledge, Mayor Edding, and if Commissioner Chance is watching from afar, I think that would be beneficial. What I'm going to do is essentially say that the Planning Commission suggested that instead of saying it can't happen in those zoning districts, that we increase the fee schedule to more than 110% to make it a greater sort of obstacle to folks assuming that, the fee in lieu of open spaces is an automatic, this is how I'm going to design my project.
Right.
They also suggested that, that could look different across zoning districts. I still think that there should be a certain cap at which you cannot exceed the, open space requirement. So sort of, say only 15% of the open space requirement is eligible to be paid. I think that remains good policy. I did get some pushback from the Planning Commission, so I want to voice that. But I'm essentially going to work with Kevin and Liz about what numbers I think work, and then bring that back to the board at our next work session to say, this is what I, as Commissioner Taylor, have come up with. I'm now presenting it to the board formally to go through the legislative process. But I wanted to give my colleagues here a heads up. Think about what numbers make sense to you. Think about what feels right to you. And once I come forward with a formal proposal, we can workshop what zoning district, is at what percentage and what the eligibility cap looks like. So that's where we are on that. Again, I think we had a great conversation. It was very productive. And we'll go from there. And certainly, Commissioner Chismar, if you wanted to add anything.
No, I understood they were talking, I agree with them about going up at a higher rate than 110. Even the 110 is kind of shaky on its justification, because that's just what the county is using, and we don't have any background on that. It's just, where do you go? Do you go 150? You go 200? I mean, what's some kind of rationale behind what percentage of the appraised value of the property or the going rate should we set it to in different districts? I don't know if, just what's our rationale? I'm just trying, just trying to put some backing behind it, to say it's not just a random number we come up with.
Right. I did reach out to kind of get an understanding of what 110 really means and where it came from. One of the reasons that I got back was that they want it the same as if a developer had to go out and purchase land to create open space. But they also wanted to have it be a little punitive by saying, okay, and it's not just 100%, it's 110%. You are actually paying a little bit more for the convenience of just doing fee in lieu. Does that make sense?
I kind of figured that, but I was just wondering if that was really it.
That was all I've heard.
Well, the other 10%. I could see the 100%, but I didn't know what the extra 10% was.
Yeah.
And understand, it's the assessed value, not the appraised value, so those numbers would be vastly different.
Gotcha.
So it's also, when you look at SSTAT's calculations for the assessments, there's a calculation for the building and the dirt. You're looking at 1 ton of the dirt. So it's the way I read it, and I've dealt with the Harford County ones before, because we do zoning cases in the county. The way I read it is that, to piggyback off what Kevin said, because he's absolutely correct. The concept from the developer's perspective is that you're going to give us, that piece of property is worth, okay, it's 100%, right? You're going to give the government 10% more under the concept, okay, that the county could go run out and buy that area, right, that dirt. And we have a cushion So, you know, if it's, you know, half an acre, then it's 100% of the half acre plus the 10% on top of it, so the county could go run out and use those funds to buy open space if it wanted to. I mean, I know the town, thankfully, has a much more flexible open space idea, meaning you may have money coming in, right, and it's sitting in a fund, but it's flexible. You could build a park, you could fix a park, you know. The county's a little bit more rigid, I think, than that. So, but that's kind of, it's great that you're thinking of a basis, but understand, like, you can make it, and again, you guys can do whatever you want, but you can literally make that percentage so punitive that nobody's gonna even touch it. It's gonna be worthless. You might as well just void it or write off, or, you know, repeal it and call it a day. Because if you did like 300%, like, nobody's gonna do that. Like, they're in to make the business, not to lose money, and that would be a loss of money, you know? So just thinking about that, you know? We could run some numbers. Like, I could use Hartford Mall as an example of someone that would get, again, if they're watching this, nothing's changing for them, but just to kind of give an idea, right? So you could take that dirt of that assessment and run 110%, and I think it's like, what, almost like a 1.7 million? It's a lot. Yeah, I kind of like ballparked it and knowing what the acreage they were missing versus what the assessed value was, and did the 110. That's the easiest way as far as the calculation, because an appraisal is going to go up higher, right? So, you know, think of that long. You want to have appraised, fine. But again, they're going to appraise the buildings too, which is going to be a little difficult. So just thoughts on that. You know, we're happy to continue to work with you, Jake, on it. So.
No, I think, because what we don't want to do is, you know, create a blanket percentage that is so punitive that it then prices people out of the B2 district where open space is really just implausible. So it's got to be, and not, you know, I think that this is where we all are. We've got to approach this with a scalpel as opposed to a sledgehammer, and just find, you know, the numbers that work for each of the intentionally created zoning districts. So we'll keep that conversation going, and within, you know, the next work session, there will be a product to be presented and discussed.
And I think your idea about, you know, a minimum percentage or maximum percentage of the open space can be paid for
Right.
in lieu is a good idea. What that number should be, again, kind of goes back to, but we need to think. And it may be just do some use cases where you take a look at some hypothetical projects and say, okay.
Well, that's what I suggested about some projects that we have that, while, again, if they're watching, we're not changing anything, but just as an example of, okay, if Hartford Mall was going to be covered under this bill, and we were going to say, okay, they would have to pay 110% of the value, let's run the calculation real quick and see how much it was. I'm pretty sure, like I said, I ballparked it was 1.7 mil. We can go back to Hickory Flats and, as another example, and see how that would. You can also play with the number, right? So you can say, okay, well, we know the assessed value. What would it be if it's 175%, right? And just kind of see where that gets you.
But also with the percentage of the open space requirement that you can buy out of with the fee in lieu. If it's 15% of the open space. So if you need an acre, or say you need 15 acres, well, I'm trying to run some simple numbers here, but anyway, say it's 25%. So if you have 4 acres required for open space, you can only buy out of 1 acre, 1/4 of that 4 acres. I think that's what Jake was saying about a percentage.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah,
That's
okay.
what I'm saying.
Gotcha,
That's what I was
okay.
commenting on my second.
Yeah, you could do that too.
And
Yeah,
see
you
what-
can certainly do that.
Is it 25%? Is it 40%? I don't, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you just want to clarify. I mean, it's either they got it or they don't. And then, you know, with the DRRAs coming, you know, and we're working on that now. Actually, I have Kevin's draft in front of me. That's going to be something that may potentially come into play. Because what they could say is that, okay, I'm going to comply with my open space, even if it's through fee and lieu. Okay, let's assume that you guys don't change anything just for the sake of argument, right?
Right.
So they're going to comply with the code, even if it's by fee and lieu. Then what they're going to do is it's going to turn around and they're going to point to open space, and they're going to say, okay, you got a park over here. You got a park here. I'll buy you a new park. You know, they have to provide more than that. If they identify open space, then that's going to increase open space where it wouldn't have done it before. Does that make sense? So not only you get the money for the fee and lieu, but then they could, it's over and above. So it could be something else. Or they could buy a piece of property and then donate it to the town. There's all kinds of different flexibility and ideas that could really come about, you know, with the DRRAs. So just kind of something to think about, you know.
And also to think about with that, if they donate it to the town, that's not the best solution because it takes it off our tax rolls.
That is
Is it not?
correct,
Is it
but
not
you get a public enhanced benefit.
we
Your
get-
parks are off the
Right, I
tax
understand
rolls.
I'm just saying there's a give and take about.
Yeah.
If they do that, or we do agree
Correct.
to that, we have to understand that we're taking that property off the tax rolls.
Yeah, but you're gonna take open space off. If you make them provide the open space in a maximum amount, you're taking it off the rolls anyway.
No, because it's still they still own it.
But it's still reduced value. If you
Right.
look at a HOA, right, and there's open space in an HOA subdivision, right? There's gonna be a tax account, a number associated with that. Look it up. Yeah, I've seen properties in the county that are like 15 acres, they're worth $200. Because, I mean, they're not
Right.
worth anything. If you can't use the property, the value just drops like a rock. If you have it as open space, it's pretty much useless. So, does that make sense? It's useless, because they have to have the open space. They can't then develop that property without not making the open space.
Well, say in a project that's a mixed-use project or a multifamily project, where you have to leave an acre of open space, well, you assess the whole 4 acres of the project as, that's one assessment.
Correct, but,
It's not like an HOA where, unless in an HOA, yeah, I understand what you're doing in
Yeah.
development, where you gotta set aside a certain amount of property, it's owned by that, and yeah, you can't do anything with it, but with
But when
mixed-use
you-
property.
when you look, when SDAT goes through and they reassess properties, they go through and they inspect, they go and they pull his public records, and they say, how many acres is open space, how many acres is asphalt, how many acres is buildings. There's a worksheet that is like 10 pages long that the state does every so often. I think it's 4 years when they reassess. So you turn around and you make this space, open space, this space, open space. They're gonna note that. And they're gonna say X amount of acres of this property, and that goes into the assessment. Does that make sense?
Just to clarify, that's only if the development remains residential, correct?
No.
No?
Assessments are done on all properties, commercial and residential.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying the open space requirement only attaches when.
Only to residential.
Only to
Yeah.
residential.
And
Only
mixed
right.
use.
So, for instance, if someone wanted to redevelop it into commercial space, that problem, I mean, yes, it would have to get reassessed,
Yes.
but that problem would no longer apply.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
But it is definitely an issue with Harvard Mall. It's definitely gonna be
Sure.
an issue with Standard on Bond.
But ultimately, assessments are based on square footage of commercial or the number of units in a development.
That's the bulk of it. So then when you turn the acreage, if you got 0.5 acres of the land as open space, it's gonna go into that. And they're gonna say it's useless, right? Well, what can you do with that 0.5 acres? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. At
So
that point.
I'll wait, you contact us and we'll set up maybe a Teams meeting or something, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything further on the fee in lieu of open space? All right. Next, we have the request for a June 7th, 2024 National Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation, which I believe I shared with everyone. The request came in, I think, just to me. I would not. Did you? Okay, I wasn't sure if we all had gotten it, but I wanted to put it on for discussion. Mr. Hopkins, I think you told me that only Kevin Bianca signed it in 2023, and it wasn't done in 2022.
I didn't go back as far as 2022.
Okay.
Apparently, it happened before I came here, so that would have actually been 2022. The minutes I found reflected that there was discussion on the dais about it, but when it came down to the final line, Mayor Chairman Bianca signed it,
Okay.
and on behalf of everyone with a singular signature. Didn't really say that there was a vote taken, there wasn't anything to reflect why he did it that way, it just that it was done that way.
And I don't remember it, although I was here in 2022.
Yeah.
At any rate, I looked at the website for Moms Demand Action. I'm certainly against gun violence, but they include in their gun violence discussion police shootings, suicides. They supported a bill at the legislature this year, Senate Bill 488, called the Gun Industry Accountability Act of 2024, which seems like something everybody could be on board with, except it really aimed civil liability at everyone except criminals. So everybody in the chain that, people that sell guns, and it's just, they claim to be nonpartisan, but from their tweets and their website, they appear to me to be a very partisan group. They referred to the Bruin decision as a very dangerous ruling by the Supreme Court. So I am not going to sign this, but I did want to let everyone else have the opportunity to decide whether they wish to sign it or not.
Well, Madam Chair, I would not be signing any such resolution, and I'd go further, and I would object to the town's name being associated with that. We are charged with the responsibilities under our charter and under state law charter of a prescribed set of limited powers. The town does not have unlimited powers, and I think that we've got a lot on our plate in this town to fulfill our responsibilities and the oaths certainly that we've all taken, and my perspective on that is it is just where will the email requests for town days and town recognitions for any particular public issue for the town to take positions on, and I think it's counterproductive and certainly is something that I'm completely 100% against.
I would just say that, as a municipality that doesn't have legislative authority over these types of issues, it would be imprudent for us to declare that the municipality has a position on any political issue. And so, that's where I come down on it. I just don't think that these are the waters for the town to wade into. I think we've got a lot of local community things to focus our energy and time on.
Yeah, I agree with Jim and Jake, and with you, Madam Chair. That's something we shouldn't, I don't think we should be getting involved in.
I think it's
don't agree with
a
Vice
divisive area that maybe we
Right.
would be best staying out of, especially since we cannot pass any gun laws or anything ourselves. So I will leave it to Mr. Krantz to perhaps make a response that politely we are going to decline.
Consider it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krantz. All right, next we have commissioners' comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to tie the knot on the saga of House Bill 538, which was approved in the early afternoon of Monday, April 8th, with final changes made by the Senate on Saturday and concurred with by the House on Monday. The last the final amendment that skipped its way over the finish line was actually a good amendment. It changed the unreasonable standard on things like height, parking, setback, etc., to essentially a standard that says as long as it does not result to a de facto denial of the project, then a regulation is permissible on a qualified project. So before MACO and MML had presented concerns that by saying you cannot provide an unreasonable standard or an unreasonable regulation on things like height, parking, setback on these qualified projects as they're defined under the legislation, that you would essentially hamstring local authority for putting, essentially good public policy in place. That if you're going to have a very dense, a project that could exceed by as much as 30% the density requirements, you're probably going to need a little bit more parking because there are a lot of people living there. So the Senate Triple E Committee changed that unreasonable standard to a requirement that does not result in a de facto denial. That is, as long as the requirement that is imposed is not a targeted requirement that says, we know this project can't do this thing, so we're going to make them do this thing to create a denial. As long as that's not what you're dealing with, the regulation is permissible. But everything else that we discussed at sort of the last blush at the legislation remains the same. So the 30% density bonus remains. The upzoning from single family to mixed housing and from mixed to, I'm forgetting the language that the legislation uses, excuse me, but essentially the upzoning by one zone remains.
Middle housing.
Middle housing, yeah, so that's from single to middle is permissible. They did do a lot of work on the definition of manufactured housing, and they did require that any manufactured home be attached to a permanent chassis. So sort of this concern about, true mobile homes has been addressed, but there remains the concern that, these are mobile homes that are permanently affixed. And so that's, what we're dealing with now. And I'm think that was all the concerns. There were a few amendments that tried to get attached that were voted down, exempting historic districts, dealing with sort of what we have perceived as a possible loophole for nonprofits. That not to say that nonprofits are acting nefariously, but that anyone could really attach themselves to a nonprofit and avail themselves of these benefits, even if it isn't the nonprofit that is steering the ship, I think was the concern. That issue was not addressed. That remains in the legislation. So there's going to be some real concerns. I know that our sister city to the east, Havre de Grace, really pushed this into the final moment. They are particularly concerned because of the state property section of the legislation, considering Harford Memorial Hospital is going away. So they're concerned about not being able to control the fate of that site, allowing the state to basically decide what happens to it. And I know that our friends down in Aberdeen they have applicable the transit-oriented development section of the law. And of course, the nonprofit section of the law affects everybody. No matter where you are in the state of Maryland, that touches everybody. And of course, finally, and this will be my last comment on it, there's just the precedent that it sets. We know Maryland is a Dillon's rule state. That's how the relationship between the state and local government functions. But we hope that our partners at state government respect local control and local authority to decide what's best for their communities. And this begins what I fear is a steady erosion of that local control, that when people go to their neighborhood polling place to elect their local officials, they do so under the understanding that they'll be able to affect change in their community, and that it's not legislators down in Annapolis who are making these decisions for them. Unfortunately, this legislation cuts against that tradition, and I do worry about the direction the state would take if future actions are pursued. So that's, as I see it, the skinny on HB 538. I don't know if the governor signed it today. It was not on the bill signing list when I looked at it yesterday, but it could have made its way on there. But I'm, short of the governor vetoing his own bill, I'm sure it will be signed within the next few weeks, and we then will have plenty of work for our Director of Planning and Town Council to sort through what that means for the town of Bel Air.
Yeah, I took the time to watch the live stream where one of our local senators, Senator Jason Gallion, made a nice presentation of these amendments to try to improve the bill, particularly with regard to the fact that this entity they created is an entity that only a nonprofit just has to be one general partner, and the for-profits can be the other partners. And so Senator Gallion's amendment was very simply to say, can we make sure that the nonprofit owns the majority controlling vote in the entity? And they shot that down cold, very, very cold to him on the verbal responses. And the other amendment that I thought was a very valid amendment was the one to say, look, right now what the law says, none of these changes are going to be able to be utilized in agricultural districts or in conservation districts. And Senator Gallion produced an amendment to say, well, and let's also add it to a historic district that's listed by the federal government as a historic district. And that was handily rejected. I was surprised because I know that's also a big concern from Havre de Grace as well. But some of the senators supporting the bill made it very clear, at least one made it crystal clear, that putting high-density housing in the historic districts is exactly the goal. It's what has to happen because that's where our infrastructure is, and that senator represented Frederick and said it has to go there. So the idea that we would be able to preserve areas of towns that are federally designated as historic districts, and that this type of incentive to supercharge high-density housing in those zones, the idea that that would be thrown aside in the state of Maryland, which has always prided itself on historic preservation as really a community a nonpartisan community no-brainer, that's by the wayside now, from what I could see. So, but I do want to compliment Senator Gallion and his effort and all those that were behind him in trying to get these common sense amendments changed. I'm sorry to see it didn't happen, but that's the legislative process, and elections have consequences.
And I do want to say the use of the word nonpartisan, I was remiss not to mention commendations are due to the entire Harford County delegation. Harford County unanimously voted no on this legislation in both houses. It was not a partisan issue for Harford County. There are 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats in our county delegation. All of them voted no. All of them recognized the harm that it would do to Harford County and the dangerous precedent that it would set. So, I certainly do think it's good for us to recognize that we have some good folks down in Annapolis looking out for Harford County. We were outnumbered on this one when you think about the rest of the state and where policy preferences are there.
Well, thank you for that.
So now we will be able to look forward to mobile homes and high-density housing in our historic districts in Maryland. Thank you to the legislature. Well, the session is over. Any further discussion amongst the commissioners this evening before we start the budget portion of our meeting? All right, in that case, the fiscal year 2025 budget discussion. Mr. Hopkins and Ms. Moody.
I respectfully defer to Ms. Moody. Quickly.
The rest of the department heads, Eddie, if that's all right with you.
Yes, Madam Chair, if it's okay, I can excuse remaining department heads.
Absolutely.
Does everyone have their budget books? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Yes.
All righty. So we're going to start, what I'm going to do is really just do a brief overview of pages 1 through 17. And then we'll come back and do the revenues, the CIP, and the American Rescue Plan, okay? So page 1, so really pages 1 through 7 are what we consider our 7-page budget. It's a summary of the budget, with page 1 focusing on the general fund revenues. Again, we will come back to this in a few minutes. Page 2, still on revenues, is going to break it down with our other 3 funds, so sewer, parking, special revenue fund. And then starting on page 3, we get into the general fund expenditures. So there's always 2 columns, your fiscal year 24 budget, which was approved, and then what is estimated for revenues and proposed for expenditures to the right of that. Under expenditures, you'll see the different departments. So for example, the Bel Air Armory, in most departments, you'll see a salary and benefits line, an expenses line, and most of the time, a capital improvements or a vehicle capital, some type of capital line. So that's how we've broken down the departments into those three categories. So page 3 is really the general government section of the general fund. Page 4 focuses on some miscellaneous items, debt service, public safety, police department. Page 5, public works, and then our committees. And that's ends general fund expenditures with page 6 and 7 continuing similar to the revenues with sewer fund, parking fund, and special revenue fund. Any questions on that setup? Okay. Page 8 is just the budget schedule itself. So it just tells you the dates, the days of the week, the times, as to when we're meeting. While pages 9 through 11 are going to tell you what we're discussing during that budget session. So refer to this maybe ahead of the meetings when you're looking to do some reading as to what's going to be discussed when. Page 11, the majority of those nonprofits presentations have now been scheduled. I'm just waiting to hear back from one to confirm, but I expect that she will. So all of these have been confirmed, and they're just really throughout the different budget dates that will be discussed. I can tell you on Thursday, we'll have the Bel Air Alliance at 4:30, and then the Bel Air Volunteer Fire Company at 4:45. So those two will be Thursday. Moving on to page 12. This is our assessable base chart that's been included in the budget in years past. The column to your left is going to be the projected assessable base for the current fiscal year, and then what the revenues would be at the existing tax rate. Again, no tax rate increase proposed in fiscal year 25, so 54 cents for real property. Half-year real property would be half of that. Personal property, public utility, business corps at $1.20. So in fiscal year 25, we're looking at almost 9.6 million. And then if we were to increase our tax rate by a penny, you know, what would that mean? And that's really what this shows. So basically, a penny on the tax rate, both real and personal together, would be about $167,000. Okay. The next page, 13, gives you an idea of our property tax revenue growth. Now again, property tax meaning real and personal together. So just to reiterate, we had a tax rate increase in fiscal year '04, which I know you can't see on here. We dropped it off in order to fit everything on a page. That was 6 cents in fiscal year 22, which was our last tax rate increase. That was 4 cents. The changes from, proposed changes from 24 to 25 are about 1.3%. So while real property, the increase was more than that, the changes in personal property brought that percentage down. Page 14 is going to be the current CIP, so 5-year projection from fiscal year 24 to 28. And again, we'll come back to this document. On page 15, this is just a nice visual for the general fund revenues, just to give everyone an idea of how our revenues are proportioned. So as one might expect, the property taxes, or the large blue section on the right-hand side of that chart, are the lion's share of our revenues at 49.3%. So very important piece to us. The second largest is going to be grants, which is the purple section at 21.2. The only reason for that, though, is because of ARPA. Otherwise, our state shared would be second. But because of the amount of ARPA that we're proposing in the budget, it's making state share taxes take a back seat to them. So state shared is the orange section at 16.8%. The next page gives you the same idea, but on the expense side. So for fiscal year '25, the large green section at the bottom is going to be public safety at 35.4%. General government, which is the blue, the darker blue section on your right, is going to be 32.3, and then public works, which is more of an aqua color, to the left is 24.5. And one would expect that those three should be the majority of your general fund budget. And these categories, as we were looking through the 7-page budget, these categories mirror that 7-page budget. So there was a section for public safety, which is the smaller Department of Public Safety plus the police department. You had general government was that full page on page 3. Public Works was the majority of that last page. So similar to the revenues as well, they pretty much mirror that 7-page budget if you're looking for the details of it. And then we always take a look at what percentage our salaries and benefits are as a percentage of the total general fund expenditure budget. It's important to keep an eye on that percentage to make sure that that does not get out of control. It is 70.2%. I believe last year, I didn't bring it with me, but I believe last year was 70.4. And we've been around that percentage for many years now. So it really hasn't budged. It decreased just slightly. Any questions on those charts? Okay. And then the last page in that section is page 17, which are our ARPA proposals. And again, we're going to come back to that section or that page in a little bit. After that, you have all the tabs of your budget book which are going to bring you to whatever department you want to take a look at. So if we just real quick flipped to the Armory budget, you'll always see a budget worksheet as your first page. It will show you historically, back to 2020, what the budget is in each line item, as well as what the actual expenditure was for that fiscal year. So looking at 2020 in the 0100 account of salaries, you'll see that the budget, the top number, 58,077, while the actual was just shy of 56,000. As you make your way over to the right-hand side, you'll see we'll get into 2024, which obviously that fiscal year is not over yet. And then moving more toward your right, you'll see the request, which is they're going to be that column represents the request from the department heads. The column to that right is the administrator recommended. And then once you all approve the budget, that last column under budgeted will be completed. And then behind that will be all the documentation. So it'll be salary justifications. There will be justifications for every line item that a budget amount is requested. Does that make sense to everyone? Paul, I know you've been through this a couple of times, but I thought it would be meaningful just to run through that for the other three.
I can always use a review.
Okay.
It's only been 2 that I've sat through.
Okay, all right. And if you all don't mind, I'm gonna go grab a glass of water. I forgot my cup before we get into revenue, so I don't lose my voice. So I'll be right back, guys. about that. All right, we're gonna start on page 1. It's a good place to start. All right, so this is the general fund revenue page. I don't plan to go line by line and explain every line item. I certainly can, so I'm gonna highlight the larger ones, the ones that are really, they're all important, but the more important ones. So if you all have any questions about the ones that I don't discuss, please feel free to stop me, and we can certainly discuss them. So the way that this document is presented is you'll see subtotals to your right. Each one of those represents kind of a category. So the $9.5 million, you heard that number already. That is the total amount, or your property taxes. So that encompasses those 6 line items for a total for property taxes. The next section of almost 3.3 million are going to be your state shared revenues. The 252,000 are considered the licenses and permits section. Grants are next of $4.1 million. So if you remember that the chart, and we talked about that grants kind of took over the state shared revenues as a percentage of the budget, you can now see the dollars that are associated with that, 4.1 compared to 3.2, and it makes a little bit more difference. The next section of 1.3 million are just miscellaneous items as well as interest income. And then the last section of about 876,000 just have to do with items that are transferring maybe from reserve accounts or from the unassigned fund balance, from the parking and sewer funds, and a few of those I'll explain as we go through. So those subtotals are important. Again, if you're looking at high-level information, you've got your subtotals, and then you can dig more into the details with each of the line items. So we're going to start with real property taxes, because as we talked about, that is the lion's share of the revenues are very important to the town. The assessments that we received to date for fiscal year '24 equate to dollars just shy of $8.4 million. So a little bit more than what you see budgeted for fiscal year '24, which is good. The fiscal year '25 estimate that we received from SDAT, and we received that in February as part of the constant yield calculation, dollar-wise equates to just shy of $8.7 million. So you may ask, well, why aren't we seeing 8.7? Why are we only seeing 8.6 in the budget? And there are several reasons for that. The first reason is because we've reduced that by about $13,500 for our Bel Air Volunteer Fire Company credits. So that's part of that. The other reason is, as we all know, the state of Maryland has acquired 3 of the properties, so the Double T, the Hartford Bank, and Lazy Boy. Thank you. So when I looked back to see when that transfer took place, it was very close to when I felt that the assessment office was calculating our assessments for '25. Those 3 together about $36,000. So I reduced our estimate, the estimate that they provided to us, just to be on the safe side. The transfer information that the SDAT document online showed was January 19th, and we get our constant yield calculation February 14th. I'm like, that's just a little too close for comfort. I'd rather be a little conservative and already factor that in. So we reduced it for that reason. And then the last reason is we've always used the real property tax line item to balance the budget, up or down. doesn't matter. Instead of trying to say, well, I'll change this and this and this, we've always just honed in on one account. That way we know where our difference is. So with this, we had about $44,000. That line item was reduced. So those three are your differences between what we receive from SDAT and what's budgeted. We've, in the past and historically, we have never budgeted, I shouldn't say never, there was one time we did, budget more than the constant yield. The one year we did was the one year we got burned, and the assessments came in much lower. So historically, we've always been right on with the constant yield, and generally, we get a little bit more when we get our assessments. So we'll see, but certainly would not be in favor of budgeting any more than that constant yield. Any questions with that, guys?
So when you say the real property taxes are used to balance the budget, and this year that was about in the order of $44,000.
Yes.
So is that to say that before that adjustment was made, the budget was coming in at, we were taking in $44,000 more than we were spending?
We had budgeted $44,000 more than we had an expense
Okay,
for.
got it.
And other than looking and every little a line item and
Sure.
fine tuning a little bit more, it's a lot of work.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I just
Yes.
wanted to be clear about where we were before that adjustment was made.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, guys. The other line item that I wanted to just mention in that property taxes is under ordinary business corps. You'll see a $100,000 reduction. Not a good number, not what I would want to see, but it's looking like our fiscal year '24 is gonna be more at that same level. So what happened in fiscal year '24 is SDAT changed their depreciation rates, their minimum rates for the different categories of personal property. The impact to all the jurisdictions is lower assessments, which means less revenue. So I had a phone conversation with, when I talked to the assessor, they knew that it was going to impact the jurisdictions, and they had actually estimated that it was going to impact them about 20%, and that's about what ours is. It's about a 20% reduction. Nothing we can do about it, it's just the change in their depreciation rate minimum. It would have just been nice to know that ahead of time before they did that for fiscal year '24. So that's why you see the reduction between '24 and '25. Okay. The next section, again, is our state share, and I'm going to focus on 3 accounts there. Income taxes being the first one at almost $2.2 million. So this line item is actually probably the most difficult revenue to budget. There's just so much that goes into this revenue. I've learned over the years that it's just best to estimate it using historical revenue and then add about 2 to 3%. So let me get you to that place, because right now, from 1.8 to 2.2 is not 2 to 3%. So we do receive a significant portion of the revenue at the end of May, June, and August. And while you may think, well, August is not even within our fiscal year, we receive a portion in July, nothing significant. The significant one is in August. Those are applicable to the end of June. So we have to bring those dollars back to the end of June. So it is significant to us on a fiscal year basis. Historically, I'm going to give you some numbers. So in fiscal year '21, our income tax revenue was $1,800,000. In fiscal year '22, it was $2 million. Fiscal year '23, it was $2.1 million. So obviously, we can see that fiscal year '24 is too low at 1.8. It's now I would now project it to be 2,150,000. So if you compared 2,150,000 to the 2,198,000, it's a 2% increase. Does that make sense?
Yes. And what resulted in the $1.8 million budgeting for the last fiscal year?
So what the piece that we don't ever have while we're budgeting is those pieces of May, June,
Okay.
and August. And they are ones that, you know, are critical within the budgeting. So without going out of scope, and we just consistently look at prior years and try to add 2 to 3%. So there were a couple years in there that our revenue increases were more than 2 to 3%. So it threw everything off going forward. Everyone okay?
The
Go ahead,
question I have,
Yep.
is this the way you have done it every previous year?
The way
Is
that
this, the way you've estimated this time is to take what you're reasonably sure we're going to get for fiscal '24 and add 2 or 3% to it to get the 2.2 million? Is that the way you have done it in budget years 2023 and 2024?
as far as I can remember, yes.
Because I looked at those years, and the increase year over year was like 2% in 2023 and 7% in 2024. So to see a 22% increase is just huge.
I understand that, but you're not looking at a 22% increase. The projection for '24 right now is 2,150,000. I mean, we've already gotten in enough revenue. We're at the end of April. So I'm estimating May, June, July's insignificant, and August based on history.
Okay.
And I guess the question is, have we not attempted that estimation in the past?
Correct.
No. It is just has gotten, I don't have my, I do, that's not true, I do. So in fiscal year '21, when I mentioned 1.8 million, we had actually received a one-time $775,000 piece of income tax. So we had received 2.6. That $775,000 one-time distribution was not known at the time. We also received a one-time in fiscal year 23 of $300,000. So to my knowledge, I have not, again, changed how I've budgeted. Always have been conservative in this line item because it is so difficult to budget. Generally by, let's see, we're in April. We do not receive a distribution in the month of April. So by the time we hit February, we've received 4, 7 million. About half of what we're going to receive for that fiscal year, give or take, just depends. We receive a large distribution in November, February, May, June, and August. The distribution in August can vary quite widely. We don't go back to the documentation that I have, but it has ranged roughly from, let's see, let's just look at fiscal year 19. It's ranged from 173,000 to fiscal year 22, which is 240,000. the June distribution has ranged anywhere from 256 to 486. So wide spreads of income tax. And looking at those again, factoring in an average and then still being conservative is where I've gotten the 2.2 for fiscal year '25.
So we budgeted 1.8.
In '24,
right?
correct.
And we're now budgeting 2.2.
That's correct, because,
Right.
go ahead, I'm
So-
sorry.
No, yeah, I'm with you, and I was just looking at, apologies for looking off your papers here,
no
Paul.
problem.
We were at,
Go ahead.
we
Look
were at,
closer.
because I wasn't around for this, but we were at 1.65 for the budget number for fiscal year 2022.
In front of me.
And we were at 1.68 for the budgeted number for fiscal year 2023. And then we continue on to the fiscal '24 budget, and that goes from 1.68 to 1.8. And now we're going from 1.8 to 2.2. So I think I'm getting lost in where that large jump is occurring from in terms of what we've budgeted in years past to what we're budgeting now. I'm totally with you in terms of where we're getting the number from.
Right,
That makes perfect sense.
right.
But in terms of how it's showing up on our budget, and it just almost seems to me as if we are changing a method where before we were saying, well, we want to sort of undershoot and we'll get more. Now we're saying, well, let's try to approximate. And I could be wrong, I could be misunderstanding that, but that, I'm just a little bit confused about. Previously, the year-over-year, fiscal year-over-fiscal year budget change was smaller, and now it's showing up as a really large change.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I don't have previous years in front of me.
Sure.
To be able to try to answer your question better than I'm answering it. So it may be better, let me, let me go back and, be able to look
Can you
at the
share those?
documentation from previous fiscal years.
Are these, these are probably posted on the internet, but I'll be happy to scan and send them to you.
Oh, no, I didn't know whether it would help the discussion now. Because that was going to be my question too, which is the budget that was passed.
Would you like to look at these?
No, I need
Okay.
to go back and look at my
Okay.
notes.
That's
I
what I-
need to go back
that's
and
what I
look at my,
thought.
my spreadsheets
That's
and
what
my
I thought.
notes and my documentation.
That's what I thought.
I'm, so, yeah.
Because the other thing that I had looked at was the county's budget wasn't up when I looked a couple of days ago. Havre de Grace has a 0 increase. They just have the same budgeted numbers last year. The state's budget, I think, was a 3.6 increase, but it was a drop of like 1.5 on corporate income taxes and an increase in personal income taxes that netted to, something like 3.5. So this number concerns me because it's a lot of money, and I'm not sure what's gonna.
But you can't compare what you see on the 7-page budget from 1.8 to 2.2. And that's why historically I provided the numbers for what is actual.
Right, so to be clear, that the 1,800,000 budget of income taxes collected, that was the budget number.
Yeah, which is, as we all, I think, can agree, is low.
Right, and
It's very low.
And reality, sitting here today, you know that we've collected a lot more than that.
Correct.
Okay. And so to date, what, do you know what we've collected?
Yes. To date, which would be through our March distribution, however, they cannot change our May distribution because whatever we receive in February, May mirrors it. So 450 is almost 1.6. And we still have June, July, and August.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah, those are June, July, and August installments,
Correct.
which cover a percentage of the.
Sure, so
Income
typically, June, July, and August, you're going to add, like I said, on average, 500,000. I mean, in fiscal year '23, you added almost 700,000. In fiscal year '22, we added almost 700,000. Fiscal year '21, about 550,000. So I'm being conservative and only including about 550, where 2 of the last 3 completed fiscal years, it was a $700,000 increase in those 3 months.
So you were saying the actual receipt in 2023 turned out to be around 2.1 million?
Correct.
And Paula, on your budget number for 2023?
For fiscal '23,
Yep,
the income taxes are there as 1.645.
right,
No, I'm sorry, 1.677,
yeah.
1.678.
So that's the delta that you're talking about. You know, the budget numbers in years past have been much, much lower than the actuals. And you've got a track record now of the actuals being much higher than the budget number. And I know you have to look at your numbers and go back and look at that, but what appears to be proposed now is, while in past years perhaps that budget number was in some cases woefully lower than the actuals, and now we've got a track record of the actuals, and this number that's being proposed in this budget is much more aligned with actual past experience.
Correct.
Is that
So-
correct?
Yes, it is. So between '21 and '22 was an 11% increase. Between '22 and '23 was a 5% increase. So we had some fiscal years that were greater than the 2 to 3%, significant, especially that 11%, which kind of, it's great that we received it, but it wasn't something that we had experience with in the past to budget for that kind of increase.
Those increases you're describing, are they budgeted or actual?
They're actual.
They're actual, okay. So it almost seems to me like this budget is now catching up with where we are.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, all right.
That's a
I'm
good
on-
way to
I'm
put
on-
it.
I'm on board now.
Yes.
I understand where we are now.
Sorry,
Okay.
I wasn't trying to
No, I
go
understand.
every
I think,
direction. It is, like I said, when I started, income taxes is extremely difficult to budget. It has been, in my 28 years of budgeting has been the nemesis of trying to get it right. I have always budgeted conservatively for that line item, because it is so much of an unknown. So I think with the couple of years that we had much larger increases than the average 2 to 3%, it got out of whack, so to speak. And so now we're trying to, like you said, Jake, we're just catching up to where we should be. And trust me, I mean, income taxes is not something that I'm going to overestimate. I mean, any of these line items. It has to make sense. And I worked and reworked this line item, to make sure that it made sense. But I understand that it looks odd, very odd.
But now you know we're paying attention.
Thank you.
But like next year when we look at it,
That makes
that
sense.
2.1 million will be in the left column.
Correct.
And then the number will actually
Yes.
it'd be a much lower differential, the
It-
delta between
Yes.
that, okay.
Yes,
So
that's
this
exactly
is
right,
kind of
Jim.
a changing point that is reflecting reality, and you believe that it is, that your number is conservative.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I do.
thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So the next one under that state shared is going to be the highway user. We received that amount directly from SHA. So that number has not been changed at all. It's $720,000. The police protection grant, we don't receive an estimate on that. So that number is actually what we're going to receive in fiscal year '24. So we are always a year behind with this. So that's why you don't see the 271 in the fiscal year '24 column, is because '24 reflected '23. We're always a year behind with this until we receive the grant information, which we don't do until after the beginning of the fiscal year. I didn't have any licenses and permits really to review with you all unless you had any questions on any of those.
I think, forgive me, I'm almost certain I asked this question in the orientation, but could you remind me the liquor license, the flat zero,
Sure.
what that is?
Sure. Yep. So with their liquor licenses, we have Harford County Liquor Control Board. So they have a fee for any establishment that needs a liquor license, whatever different level of liquor license that they need. They also have the different fines amounts if they have to fine an establishment for whatever reason. So those are their revenues for the 3 jurisdictions and the county. And then they have expenses that go along with that, the same types of expenses that we do. So salaries, utilities, pension, legal, accounting, et cetera. And then what they do is they say, okay, Bel Air, these are your alcohol license fees that belong to your jurisdiction. And then these are your costs on a prorated basis of those revenues. Well, because the costs are more than the revenue, we receive nothing.
So there is, in theory, a chance that this could be more than zero, but it's just because the
There
delta works out that way.
is, Jake, but it,
It hasn't been.
and I don't know if I printed
Got it.
that page because it's been zero for such a long time.
Understood.
Um,
And do
it
those
probably's been 10 years at least.
do those expenditures? I'm sure they show up on the other end somewhere else, because we're losing money essentially on the liquor deal.
So no, so
Okay.
we don't see, those are not our expenses. So we
Okay.
just don't see anything. There
Okay,
is
so
no
we're not actually
revenue
losing
coming
any
in.
money.
No,
Got it. They're not saying Town of Bel Air, you owe us.
No.
X. Okay.
no, so,
Understood.
good point, sorry about that. No, they don't come back to us and say, okay, we don't owe you, Bel Air, but you owe us.
Right,
Because
okay.
the expenses outweigh the revenue.
Got it.
So no, it's just a matter of, we're not getting that proportion of our revenues to us because their expenses are
But-
higher.
Does the county have the same deal with the liquor board? Do they get zero?
I don't know if they get zero or not. I honestly don't get the information on the other jurisdictions. I only get Bel Air's. I see the
Okay.
total expenses, but I don't see their portion of the revenue section to know
So the
that.
jurisdictions would be the 3 municipalities and the county?
Correct.
I
That's
do
right.
know from other experience that the budget of the liquor board is quite tight.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me, but that is a good clarification. And I'd be curious to know about the other jurisdictions.
I can probably find that out. I can just call the liquor board.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I can find
you know,
that out.
and I don't know if you really need to waste your time on it. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And the liquor board cannot raise their fees without going to Annapolis. So it's not something they can do internally on their own.
That is how I know their budget is quite tight. Yeah.
Alrighty, so then to our grants section. ARPA is being budgeted at 2.664. We are going to come back to that so we can look at the details, okay? The next one in this group is the Harford County tax rebate at 1.2 million, basically flat from fiscal year 2024. This is based on a very detailed Harford County formula. But this is the amount that the 3 municipalities are given, not the same amount. It recognizing that we provide our own police patrol services inside our town boundaries in lieu of the sheriff providing the services. And again, fairly flat. It was flat between 23 and 24 as well, so not much change.
Why is that?
Why is,
The tax rates, if the real property taxes are going up, why is our piece of that?
I said, there is,
That's on the property taxes, right?
it's,
County tax rate, rebate?
no, this isn't the rebate or the lower tax rate that you see on your tax return. I mean, your property tax bill.
That's right.
No. This is a physical revenue coming into the town from the county 4 times a year, reimbursing us for basically our police services. And it is the formula's been in existence for as long as I've been here, so, and probably longer than that. But it's just dropping numbers into a formula and then proration based on the 3 municipalities.
Police protection, the salaries for the police and the capital investments for cars and things like that go up. We don't get a difference.
No, our costs aren't even a part of this formula.
No, but I'm saying that isn't this to help us pay for
Yes,
police protection?
yes,
That we provide the town citizens?
correct.
And that continues to, I'm just saying that continues to go up. The cost to provide that protection, but the contribution from the state.
From the county,
Seems to be pretty flat.
right.
Something to point out to the county council.
There's a lot of history with this that I haven't gone into, but a very long time ago, earlier in my career here, the 3 municipalities got together and hired IGS to do a study of the formula to see what needed to be changed, outdated, et cetera. They provided recommendations. We provided them to the county and got shot down quite quickly.
I'm sure.
It was brought back up again, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago, without hiring someone to do a study, just wanting to start the conversation, and it went nowhere.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been broached for 12 years? Okay. Give or take.
Thereabouts.
I was actually commissioner when it was broached the last time. I was actually commissioner when it was broached the last time.
What year were you up there? And that was when?
Back in 2012.
I think so, yep.
But I take it because this is something that they do really out of the kindness of their heart, that you know, that's not,
Yeah.
not gonna budge much.
Yeah,
Especially since the county has a $3 million shortfall.
yeah, yeah, you know. It's very similar to the sewer service agreement that we have with the county. It's a 1988
Yeah.
agreement. And we've tried on that front as well and have gotten nowhere. So the two are very,
Yeah.
two
that
are very
makes sense.
similar,
I understand.
very similar. Okay, the last one in that group is the stormwater management, for Harford County, $140,000. So this is based on what we actually received in FY '23, and the estimate that we've received money-wise in fiscal year '24 after the beginning of the fiscal year. Less than fiscal year '24, because that fiscal year '24 was based on previous years that were around $175,000. It's based on an MOU that we signed in April of 2020 with Harford County along with Aberdeen and Havre de Grace. It provides an annual distribution toward the cost of our stormwater management remediation obligations. but the calculation is based on Harford County recordation tax. So as their recordation tax changes, our portion is going to change. So when they sent us our estimate at the beginning of FY '24, they're estimating lower recordation tax revenue. So that's why our estimate for stormwater management was lower than it has been in the past. Does that make sense? Okay. I wanted to mention, we also do have a stormwater management reserve fund. It basically, the way that reserve fund changes is throughout the year, when you get to the end of the fiscal year, the difference between your revenues and your expenditures will either increase that reserve or they'll decrease that reserve, depending on if your revenues are higher or if your expenditures are higher. Steve's budget for the MS4 Stormwater Management Program is located in the Administrative Department of Public Works. It mirrors this budget, so the two are exactly the same. We do have a reserve amount of $301,000 right now. So we have been spending less than what the county has been providing to us, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, Steve and I have talked on this many times, and this reserve will come in handy when there does come a time when we have to spend in a fiscal year more than what the county is going to provide to us. We can then use our stormwater management reserve fund instead of current year revenues. Okay. All right, now on to some miscellaneous accounts. The first one is the Beller Armory fees at $97,000. So this is simply based on history. And we have seen a slow increase in our armory fees. Julia does a tremendous job with renting the armory, and we're seeing that in our revenue line item throughout the years. The red light camera line of $581,250 projected to be the same as FY '24. And if you divide that number by $75, which is the cost of a ticket, it's 7,750 tickets. I know, it's mind-boggling. But looking at where we are in fiscal year '24 and projecting out for the next 3 months, we should be extremely close to budget. So I did not feel it necessary to change that budget for FY '25.
Just have a quick question on
Sure.
that. Is, which one of these categories would be the fines we get in traffic court? Do we get fines in traffic court
No,
for
we do
Bel Air
not.
violations, moving violations?
No
That's
moving
all capped by the
violations.
state?
Correct.
So our,
So speeding or running a
we-
red light, a stop sign.
do we collect any fines based on misdemeanors that we've declared in our statute?
No. Mm-mm.
Do we have any misdemeanors that carry a fine in our code? Do you know, Eddie?
Off the top of my head, no, sir. I'd have to go back and research that to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're granted that authority under the state code to establish our own local violations with civil fines associated with that.
I don't believe we've ever pursued that. I believe like the traffic violations are all state issued citation, parking citations would
Okay,
come back to
all right,
us.
all right.
That is a good question, but no, I don't believe.
No,
we've
that's
pursued it.
fine, and for another day, yeah,
It's a legit question.
yeah,
though.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
The next or the last one in that section is going to be interest on investments. Double what it was projected in FY '24. So to give you some information here, our current LGIP rate, so that's the local government investment pool. That's where we keep the majority of the town's funds. It's at 5.35%. It has been as high as, I think, 5.55 this fiscal year. I'm estimating that we will start to see rates come down. Granted, no one has a crystal ball when it comes to what the feds are going to do with the Treasury rate, but I think we will start to see that chip away. How quickly, don't know. But I am projecting that we'll see that rate come down in fiscal year '25. So
You don't think we'll get 500 for half a million?
I do.
Even with that shipping?
Correct.
All right.
Correct. So we not only have investments in the local government investment pool, but we also have CDs. We have CDs with terms that range anywhere from 9 months to 25 months, with current rates right now from 3% to 5.5%. The 3% is going to mature this month. So I've really tried to position the town's investments through these CDs to earn that higher interest rate, at least through fiscal year '25. Trying not to erode too much as to what we would collect in the pool at 5.35%, knowing that that's going to start to probably come down, and interest rates in the CDs are higher than they've been, obviously. And I have very good relations with, the local banks in the area. And I think with those relations, the majority of them can provide a slight bump because we do jumbo CDs. I mean, we're close to the FDIC limit. I get as close to that FDIC limit, which is $250,000, as possible. I do not go over that because if the bank would default, the feds would have to take it over. We won't see anything more than $250,000. So, I'm not doing 10,000 and 20,000 and 50,000 CDs. I'm doing $240,000 CDs. So thinking about those terms and the rates, the compounding effect is enormous. So you have to think about those rates that are going to remain with us into throughout fiscal year '25. And rates, even though I'm projecting them to come down, it's going to be a slow reduction. Nothing's going to be done quickly with the Fed Treasury rate.
And these are the monies in our capital reserve and ARPA?
These are just, it's your cash. I mean, so it's cash that, just like you would at home. You've got so much.
Right, but I mean, you're tying it up you're saying for 6 months, 30 months or whatever, so it has to be something that's, like you said, the capital reserve fund, that's there for emergencies type of deal. Or, we've been holding the ARPA dollars, right?
So this-
invested some of the.
The ARPA is not even factored into this because
Oh,
you want to
okay.
remember ARPA interest is restricted.
Okay,
So ARPA interest is not part of this line item because it's not a revenue until you utilize it. So ARPA is not even factored in the interest in this line item. This is strictly, let's just say, non-ARPA interest.
okay.
Okay. But, I've been doing this long enough. I know what our cash flow is. I know when we need the money, which generally is at the end of the fiscal year. You get the majority of your monies with your property taxes in September, by September, because everyone has to pay if you're semi-annual. And then generally at the end of December, when the second half is due. So, I know state shared revenues, what comes in quarterly, what comes in monthly,
Yeah.
I've been
Okay.
doing this long enough. I know how the cash flow works and I'm comfortable. Any changes that, I make or recommend in the, terms of the CDs, I have to run through Eddie. Any new CDs that I'd like to invest in, I have to have his approval first. Any changes in terms from an existing CD that I want to renew, I have to run and receive his approval before doing all that. So there are checks and balances to this.
Right, no, I think, no, that you're making smart use of the money. I mean, why let it sit in,
That's the name of the game.
why let it sit in a checking account for 0.5%?
Yeah, no.
Right, or
Yeah.
whatever the heck they're giving.
Right, yeah, it's crazy. I
Right.
keep as little as possible in our checking account.
Right.
You know, and I remember, you all will too, you know, when rates were dismal just several years ago, this line item was $36,000. It's just, the ability for that, earning that interest with these higher rates really makes a difference.
Right.
Does anybody have any other questions with that? Okay. All right, so then below the line, as I mentioned, we're into our, kind of our transfer accounts. The one that I'll mention is the transfer from capital reserve. Similar to last year, we're proposing that we utilize only $175,000 instead of the over $400,000 from the current fiscal year. Use capital reserve monies instead of current revenues. And they are within, you know, Steve's departments as well as Kevin, so they will go over the details with you on those projects, but I'm just going to mention them briefly. In the armory, we have the hot water heater and circulation system replacement at $35,000. The dimmable lights for the auditorium at $15,000. Within town buildings, the Public Works planning entry door replacements at $15,000. The Public Works overhead door and operator replacements at $60,000. And then a $25,000 project at Rockfield Barn. In Kevin's budget and planning, the wayfinding signage project at $25,000. So those comprise the $175,000. Okay.
So does this
Yes.
mean that in the last 2 years, we've been drawing down a capital reserve account by, say, 600,000, give or take? Is that what this means?
The last 2 years?
Yeah, 432 last year, 175 this year, or this coming year. We'll be drawing that account down.
Yes. Yes, that is what, now I say that's what's budgeted.
Correct.
That will not happen, let's just say that, in fiscal year '24, yes, we've budgeted $432,000. That matches what we spent exactly, which it never does. But our revenues were more than, overall, our revenues were more than our expenses, so we did not need to take that much from the capital reserve. Then we won't do it. Just because it's budgeted doesn't mean we'll do
Right.
it, because it doesn't make sense. If you know, if we need to, it could be a lower amount or it could be nothing. But at the
Right.
time of budgeting, that's what we were proposing.
Right, so we're proposing the last year and this year, we'll probably be drawing from it as opposed to putting money in.
Correct. But we still have ways to put money in the capital reserve. So within, because we have a policy for all of our reserve accounts. The capital one is one that we just revised in September, effective for fiscal year '23. So there are two ways that reserve fund is increased, and that's during the budget process. The town will include an expenditure between $20,000 and $50,000. So there will be a line item in here that we'll talk about when we get there, that will put anywhere between $20,000 and $50,000 into the capital reserve.
Okay.
And then at the end of the fiscal year, based on the final audited numbers, this policy gives Eddie the authority to transfer up to an additional 75% of the excess of revenues over expenditures. We made that change, it used to be 50%, we increased it to 75%, because we knew we were proposing to start to utilize the capital reserve a bit more. So we wanted the ability to be able to put more money back in there and replenish it, because that's just as important. So it just gives him the flexibility to be able to do that. Okay?
Okay.
And do we have the number for year over year, the capital reserve in this book?
Not in the book, you do
Okay.
not.
Okay. Do you happen to know?
Yes. We are still, the number I'm going to give you has not been adjusted for our fiscal year '23 audit yet, but it's 3.4 million.
Okay,
And it should be higher
okay.
than that. So it's a comfortable capital
Sure.
reserve.
And does the town have a, traditional benchmark for the capital reserve that has been traditionally observed, or is that something that, as needed is assessed?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, no,
Okay.
Jake, because we haven't really been utilizing it.
Okay.
Fiscal year '24 was really the first year that, through discussions between Eddie and myself, we had, in years past, just kept putting off some capital projects. And you can only do that for so long. It
Sure.
costs more, if things break down. I mean, we're just setting ourselves up for some substantial expenses. So when we looked at the fiscal year '24 budget, we felt that there were some significant projects, capital projects in there that had just been
Sure.
set aside, and we needed to do them. And again, through those discussions, that's what your capital reserve is for. So really, '24 was the first year where we started to put numbers in the budget and utilize it. Before that, we were just putting money into it.
Sure.
The only exception to that was the building, the town hall building. And I don't have that number off the top of my head as to how much we proposed to take from that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to make sure that, obviously this is my first budget season, and if what we were seeing was a steady decline of the capital reserve,
Right.
sort of just using it year over year to supplement the budget, which is obviously not what's happening.
Correct.
That would have been cause for concern, but
Absolutely.
that makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense.
Yes. Yep. We want to be able to, if you do see too much of an erosion with that and not enough replenishment,
Right.
we have a problem. Correct.
Okay.
The last two line items on this page, the transfer from sewer and parking fund, we'll get into the nitty-gritty more when we review those two enterprise funds. But what these $2 represent are amounts that reimburse the general fund for employees' salaries, benefits, and overhead. You have to think about those two funds as business-type funds. They are self-supporting. So the majority of those costs, when it comes to, again, overhead like utilities, custodial support, employee support, benefits that goes with those, IT support, there's a lot that goes into that calculation. If they were businesses that stood on their own, you would see them as expenses there, but you see them as expenses in the general fund. So we do a proration calculation twice a year, once for the budget, and then we firm it up at audit time. And then again, that is the amount that is paid to the general fund. There's no dollars that are changing hands. It's just a book entry that you have to do for auditing purposes. But this is what we're projecting those numbers to be. That completes revenues. Do you all have any questions on anything else that I didn't cover?
No.
Okay, all right, all righty. All right, so we're going to move now to the CIP, which is on page 14. Okay. So I'm going to focus on the FY '25 column, and just discuss the projects, or really what makes up those numbers. I'm not going to go in depth on any of these projects, because the department heads are going to do that for you all when they do their budget presentation. But at least I can put some meaning to these numbers that are on this page for everyone. So the IT capital project of $59,200 is made up of a server, several servers, a replacement, our normal computer replacements, and then a Toughbook laptop for our police department. So nothing out of the ordinary. Josh does a fantastic job with managing our IT system. He is extremely knowledgeable and very budget conscientious, I think we can say, right, Michael? He does a fantastic job. I can't say enough good things about Josh. So again, that 59,000 is those few items that are necessary to keep up or replace what needs to be done on an annual basis. With the next one, which is PLN 02, which is the Rockfield Park development of $10,000. This will be in the planning department's budget, and it's for plantings and necessary upgrades to the Chesapeake Sensory Playground in Rockfield Park, as well as upgrading the previously designated Memorial Grove with a granite marker. PLN 04, which is the bike pedestrian improvements of $5,000. Again, within the planning department's justifications. This is to proposed upgrades for improvements to the transit stops for the town, including benches, signs, bike racks, paving, and some selected improvements to trails and sidewalk connections. PLN 05 is the Rockfield Manor improvements of $20,000. You'll find $17,000 of this in the planning department and the other $3,000 in the forest conservation fee in lieu account. This is to provide plantings around the existing parking area in front of Rockfield Manor and add trees in selected locations to enhance the views. The next one, PLN 06, is the Burns Alley connections of $585,000. Within the planning department budget, $85,000 would be used for engineering plans and specifications for improvements along Burns Alley based on a concept that was created in fiscal year '22. And then the additional $500,000 would be used for construction associated with the improvements along Burns Alley. This is also an ARPA proposed project. PLN 12 is Homestead Park at $280,000 within the planning department. This is, there's two pieces to this. The first one is $80,000 to replace the playground equipment at Homestead Park. And then $200,000 is proposed to upgrade the rubberized material to enable handicap access along with inclusive play equipment, again at Rockfield Park. Both of those are also ARPA proposed. PLN let's see, where am I? I'm sorry, guys, I skipped a couple there. PLN 08 is the wayfinding implementation at $25,000 within the budget of planning department. This is also a capital reserve request. This will include any unanticipated signs such as a gateway identification along Conowingo Road, replacement of the Public Works Planning ID sign, and the town logo in the rotunda interior. PLN 09 is Plumtree Park at $460,000. You'll find a piece of this in the planning department as well as the special revenue fund. The special revenue fund is a grant that we've requested. We have not heard whether we've received it or not, but it's $110,100. And then within the planning department, it's an additional $350,000. The grant requires a $50,000 match, so that's what's included, along with $300,000 is proposed to upgrade, again, to the rubberized material to enable handicap access at Plumtree Park. All right, now I'm back on track with PLN 14. This is the Thomas George Street improvements at $1 million, which is included in the planning department's budget. I know the engineering for this project is moving towards completion. I believe Kevin expects it maybe this month or May at the latest. But based on those, that engineering company will have construction estimates, would then go out to bid for construction. This is a 3-phase project, and the estimate is $1 million. So whether we can do phase 1 and phase 2 or all 3 phases, you know, we will see once those estimates come in. But the overall estimate has been $1 million. PLN 15 is our Johnson Control Energy contract. We did this many years ago with electricity savings. This is actually the debt service. The project cost the general fund about $937,000. The debt service runs to fiscal year 32. So the annual debt service of principal and interest is almost $76,000. Then we get into PD 00, which is the police department. Chuck has budgeted 3 vehicle replacements at a total of $169,500, and this is a ARPA proposed project. PD 01, which is equipment in the police department of $97,000, is twofold. $35,000 is for the surveillance system. It's a real-time remote surveillance camera trailer. So being able to purchase and have it as our own instead of utilizing another jurisdiction's, as well as firearms equipment up $62,000. He's requesting funding to transition from a Sig Sauer gun to a Glock. And again, he'll go over those details with you all. I think he's on Thursday, actually. I think the police department's budget's Thursday. Body cameras is PD 002. This is a 5-year installment plan for our body-worn camera program, and it's a cost of $38,351 each year. Moving on to Public Works, PWG 00 is our vehicles and equipment at $330,000. Again, this is ARPA requested. So a new pickup truck at $70,000, a leaf vacuum truck at $190,000, and a second pickup truck, and again, $70,000. So 2 pickup trucks and a leaf vac truck, for a total of $330,000. The next one, PWG 01, that $407,000 is debt service on the building. So we borrowed money, and then we used ARPA money, and we used not too much capital reserve. So this is the debt service, $407,000 on that project. PWG 04 of $75,000. So this is our town building, or property, capital, or some maintenance in here. And these are the three projects that I've, actually, I'm sorry, the two projects I've already mentioned. The entry door replacements and the overhead door and operator replacements are that $75,000. PWG 04, we talked about the MS4 stormwater management program already. PWG 06 is Rockfield Manor building, capital and major maintenance. $25,000 is the request, and again, that's for the Rockfield barn. PWG 07 is the armory, again, capital and major maintenance. Really talked about this already as well, because this is a part of the capital reserve, but this was the dimmable lights for the auditorium, as well as the hot water heater and the circulation system replacement. All right, moving now to the parking fund, which is your PWP. 04, that's the parking garage lighting upgrade, so that's also Johnson Controls. That debt was about $73,000, and then the debt service is about $6,100 a fiscal year, which will mature in fiscal year 32. The next one is PWP 06, which is when we borrowed money to pay for the parking garage sweeper. Again, debt service of about $6,900 that will mature in fiscal year 27. PWP 09 is debt service on a $31,500 enforcement vehicle for parking, which will mature in fiscal year 28. Debt service is $3,200 a year. PWP 10 is the parking garage capital. We're requesting $17,000 in fiscal year 25. This really isn't capital, it's more major maintenance, and it's to paint the Pennsylvania Avenue side stairwell. Now moving to the sewer fund, which is the PWS, 07, sewer vehicles and equipment. Steve is requesting $65,000 to replace the sanitary sewer pickup truck. This would also be an ARPA request. PWS 08 at $3,380,000 is also ARPA, and we'll get into more of that in just a moment. But this is pumping station engineering, repairs, and replacements. And then the last three are all inflow and infiltration work that we did, almost $1.5 million in those 5 years. Those debt services will be coming up in fiscal year 25 to mature, and then the last one will mature in fiscal year 27. Are there any specific questions on capital?
Not at this time.
Okay.
And then we get into them deeper at each project, each division, right, department?
Yes, sir. Okay. Eddie, can you take one and pass one around? All right. The last discussion for tonight is ARPA. And it won't be the last discussion on ARPA, but we have to start somewhere. So if you all would turn to page 17 first. I'm going to talk about this page fairly quickly, and then we'll move to the sheet that I handed out. We've really talked about all of these projects already very quickly, but this page here will provide you with a nice snapshot as to what we're proposing for ARPA for fiscal year '25. It will give you the item number from the original ARPA spreadsheet, and I do have a couple of changes that I need you all to make to those. So the patrol vehicle replacements, instead of 1010, that should be 1014. The 3 public works vehicle replacements should be 1015. And the last one on there, the sewer vehicle replacement, should be 1038. But this will provide you with the item number, the proposal, and the budget, as well as the page number that you can find some additional justification on, and the department that it resides in. So again, what's nice about this page here is you've got these ARPA requests all throughout the budget. This gives you one page where you can look back and see what the proposals are. Okay, so the page that I handed out to you, you've seen this before. We went over this. I don't recall how long ago, but I know when we had that the last conversation, you all asked for a completed column. So I added a completed column to this worksheet, which really made sense, so thank you for that recommendation. Any project that has been 100% completed, you're gonna see an X in that column. What I tried to do is I also bolded the entire row for a fiscal year '25 project, just so it would stand out to you all a little bit more. Up at the top, I have included the interest that's been earned on ARPA funds through March of '24. So that's about $575,000, which brings our proposed ARPA budget up to about $10.5 million. And yes, we'll continue to earn interest on those ARPA funds. I did not include any type of estimate as to what that would be. I can tell you that our annual report due to the feds is due at the end of this month. So we will be taking money out of the ARPA account and reimbursing ourselves based on that annual report. So we won't be earning, we've been earning about $28,000 a month on unused ARPA funds. So that will come down. Once that does, I'll have a better idea as to how much interest we'll earn. As we all know that it's going to, funds have to be obligated, again, by the end of this calendar year. But as I have on here for everybody, we have 2 years to spend it. So, the monies are going to sit there. What's going to be a little tricky is we're going to earn interest for the next 2 years. I mean, if you think about maybe like Kevin has some major projects. Steve has obviously the sewer project. Those are going to take time to do. So the difficult piece is trying to kind of estimate when are those projects going to be done? When will the interest, earning the interest cease? And what rate are we talking about? Obviously, we're going to be conservative in all of this, but that's just something that I have in the back of my mind is just that one thing that's going to be a little tricky with trying to figure out, what's that final number look like when it comes to ARPA. So I didn't want to get in the weeds on that here today, again, because that report is due at the end of April, and I will have a better idea. Like I said, this is not going to be the last time we talk about ARPA during this budget. So I'll probably have a little bit better of an idea as to interest before we close the budget out, okay? All right, so the actual or committed, really has stayed the same, meaning, the meaning of that column is exactly the same. The estimated cost, is the project, and what we've estimated. Some of these you'll see in the budget, for example, TOBA 1,007, that 280,000, as I mentioned, that's the budget. Nothing's been committed yet because the budget hasn't been passed. We don't have a contract, so it's still up in the air. The fiscal year '25 projects are all that way with not being committed. If you, the TOBA 1020, just want to look at that for a second. So that $315,170 is, we already have purchase orders. We've already started a contract with all of that work. So while we haven't spent all of it, it's, the whole amount has been already committed. Steve, latest email to me on March 15th, when we were working on the sewer fund budget, was that they're waiting to receive the construction estimates from KCI for the Shamrock Pump Station, which they're estimating to be about $968,000, and Gateway Pump Station Force Main, which is about $2 million. So that's where he got his $3 million number.
So
Yes.
the right-hand column says status, FY '22, 3 and 4. 23, 4, and 5, sir.
Correct.
For that 3.38 million. Has any of that been paid to date? Or we still, for FY '25, we got out of ARPA funds, and we're putting up 3.38?
That's what he's requesting.
Okay.
That's what he's
That's right, that's
requesting.
right.
Yes.
Because it had multiple FYs in there.
I know.
Some paid in the previous FY, but anyway.
Yes,
Okay.
so that 315,000, we haven't paid all of it yet, so some of it was in some of the purchase orders were 23, some of the purchase orders were 24, and the rest are gonna be in 25. Does that make sense? Some of our contracts have been in 23, 24, and they're gonna be in 25. So it has been spread out amongst 3 fiscal years. Yes,
So basically you're saying 315 has already been committed.
correct, because we're already got,
There's about 3 million to go.
mhm,
And that's,
Yeah.
give or take.
mhm.
Okay.
Yes. So if you turn on the back page, this is really what I wanted to focus in on, and again, we'll be having multiple discussions with this, but the actual or committed cost is $6,750,000. The ARPA award is $10,544,000. The remainder to commit is just shy of 3.8 million. But page 17 in the budget is asking for 6.1. So, what we decided to do within this budget is to, because we know we're gonna have to make, you all are gonna have to make a decision as to what projects are ARPA and what are not. And it needs to be done during the budget, again, because we have to get moving on these projects in order to get them obligated by the end of the calendar year. So our stance was, let's put everything in here that, could be completed with ARPA money, and then we just have to make the decision which projects are gonna make the cut and which projects are not. So does that make sense? We just gave you the whole kit and caboodle, and then we just have to whittle it down and make decisions on which ones are gonna move forward and which ones are not. That's why I wanted to be able to provide document that I passed out to you all because I wanted you to see where we were with this. We knew we were gonna have a shortfall, but it's us being able to present all of the projects to you and then having discussions about it, and then making a decision within the budget as to which ones are moving forward and which ones are not. And they'll still be, even though we decide on the projects, you know, there'll still be decisions to be made here and there, because these are estimates, and you get, you know, the contract that's gonna come in, it's not gonna be exactly the estimate. So, you know, there will still be tweaks here and there, but at least we know what projects are gonna move forward and what aren't. So I hope that is helpful to you all. Do y'all have any questions?
My biggest question was that 22% increase, which now I think I understand.
I'm glad.
So,
I didn't mean to panic you, trust me.
I was a little concerned. I was more than a little concerned. I was like, uh-oh.
No, I would
And I
never
know
com-
you're always very conservative, so.
Yes, ma'am.
so, yes, my
Sir.
question has to do with, okay, on the ARPA money. In this budget, there's a proposed ARPA budget of $6,109,500, is that correct?
Yes,
On page 17?
that's correct.
And is there going to be $6,100,000 to fund that?
No,
Okay, so the proposed budget on this is intentionally an overpayment.
the budget is intentionally over ARPA because we did not, when I say we, staff, did not feel that it was our place to say, well, we're gonna fund this and this. That's your call. We wanted to present you with everything that we felt was ARPA eligible, and that are projects that have either been on the books for a while, or ones that, you know, we feel need to be accomplished, so that you all have the full picture of everything. We can have conversation about it, and then we can decide what to move forward with in the budget.
So our max, just look at the number, our max that we're looking at is around 3.8 million?
That's correct.
That's the max, okay. So, in other words, just a hypothetical. We can't completely rehab the sewer system and do the Thomas Street upgrades because we don't have that much money.
That's correct.
So if they were the priorities, nobody else gets funded.
Correct.
So this isn't like, okay, I got you. So if that happened, then the DP, these other, you know, items here, that just would dwarf them all. Okay.
And I don't want to speak for Steve, but when we started the whole ARPA proposal, we knew that the sewer fund was really the balancing item, if you will. Very important to be able to do the projects that he's proposing. But I think we also knew we weren't going to be able to accomplish both of them. I mean, one's a $2 million rehab, one's pretty much $1 million rehab. We have, over the years, we've done I&I work, and we've borrowed money for it. And again, Steve's going to go over this with you in depth, but these are not items that are breaking. They're not ones that, you know, if we can't fund, if we can only fund one of them and not both of them, that we're gonna have to do something about the other one now. We were trying to say, well, here's ARPA money. This is a good opportunity to be able to do the work that needs to be done, because it's gonna need to be done somewhere in the future. So I think going into this originally, the almost $3.4 million was never really what we had in mind as going to be able to spend on sewer projects. So I just wanted to give you that kind of background. Paul, I know you were here when we started to have that conversation, but the three of you were not, so.
And I appreciate having a list so that we can take a look at it and say, you know, we want to do this and not that.
Right.
And know how much, you know, everything costs, or
Yes.
some approximation for how much everything costs.
Yes.
Because I know, you know, we have to make choices. We only have so much money.
Right, and you know, and the same with the $1 million for the Thomas and George Street. That's for 3 phases. You know, again, not wanting to speak for Kevin, but we've had conversations about this multiple times. Probably won't do all 3 phases, but his idea is, here's the estimate, and it's an older estimate, so, you know, construction has changed significantly. But if we can only do phase 1, he'll tell you the phases that he feels are the most important. And, you know, what happens if we can't do all 3 phases. So that's the level of discussion that we felt needed to happen during this budget year in order to make good decisions about our ARPA dollars. Because again, once you all pass the budget, approve the budget towards the end of May, we have to procure, we've got to write a contract, we've got to procure it. I mean, there's a lot that still has to be done in order to obligate these funds. So we have to get a move on doing all this, because we obviously don't want to lose the money. So the timing of this just made sense to kind of just throw everything and let's have conversations about it.
Appreciate that you came up with options for things. I mean, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to deal with, and, you know, hopefully get some public debate on it too, as to what they might like to see in the budget meeting, so
Right,
that's a good thing.
yes. Everybody good? That makes sense? Anybody have any questions at all?
I think we are finished for today, at least.
Okay.
There will be much, much more to come, I'm sure,
Yes.
but
So
I
let me
think
just
we're at
make,
our limit.
let me just make one other quick comment. So on your agenda here, everyone, you'll see that we have a 10D, which is discussion by commissioners on budget issues. So throughout our budget meetings, if you all have questions that, on things that you need answers on, or will need a little bit more research, I keep a running outstanding budget list. And I don't have anything from tonight unless I missed anything that you all, oh, good, Eddie's got 2. Perfect. And so that will just start that list, and we'll just continue to add things to that list. I'll bring that list with me to each budget session, so we can look at it, at least update you all. We haven't gotten the information yet, or yes, we have. So as we go through this, if you all have questions on things, please tell us now as we're going through the budget, and don't wait until the very end, when it's gonna be much harder to get those answers and then have discussions. So thank you.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
It was only slightly painful as usual, but
Oh, come on.
So, Madam Chair, I do have 2 issues
Yes.
that you all discussed, and I want to make sure, actually, there's a third one, and I didn't have a pad of paper, so I've got to go back and listen to the YouTube and see what the third one was. But one was a question by Commissioner Rutledge about ascertaining from misdemeanor violations, what monies, if any, does the town receive as a result of any of those? And then the second may have been a sidebar conversation between you and Commissioner Chismar about the police services rebate formula, that why is it flat at 8,000 and change? Do you, am I correct, do you want either one of those followed up on? Are they germane to this discussion, or just general research?
I didn't perceive that the police revenue was going to be something that we're going to research right now. I know the county's got a $13 million shortfall. I don't think this budget season is the one to bring it up.
Right. Well, it's not appropriate for, at least right now,
Correct.
at this time. because
Correct.
it's not- Nothing's gonna happen.
Nothing. Not in time
Yeah,
for this
not
budget
in
anyway.
time for this budget and whatever, so it's, yeah. But it's something we should probably think about.
Put on our radar to
Approaching,
discuss.
To approach them with.
Okay,
Yeah.
was there a third? I apologize, like I said, I went out to get a pad of paper and to make a note, and I couldn't recall what it was. There was a third one the three of you, or the two of you may have discussed, that you wanted some more background on.
Jimmy, you had brought up the liquor board and wanting to know about,
Yeah,
but I
and-
took
and
that
we
off
don't-
my,
yeah, take
I took that
the
off my
Yeah,
list.
that's,
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I was just, curious, but that got resolved because of what, Commissioner Taylor had said, they're aware of it at the General Assembly, wasn't going
Yeah.
anywhere.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll double check the live stream to make sure I didn't miss something, because I thought there was a third.
Yeah, you don't need,
But you're
I'm
not,
sorry,
you're,
go ahead.
so police services rebate, we're not interested in at this point in time. Liquor board, we're fine. Do you still want any research on the misdemeanor violation?
no, let's not do that right
Okay,
now. I'll
okay.
take further look at
Okay,
the state law enabling act and our charter, and then I'll go from there.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
Because
Alright.
during the budget season, none of these things are going to affect the budget that we're
No,
working on right now.
Right.
They're just thoughts that come up as we're reviewing the numbers.
Mhm. All right.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You do make it as painless as possible.
I appreciate that. I do try.
You do. And I know,
And
right-
yes, this is my 28th budget.
congratulations. Yes.
Well done.
Lisa does, she's always very conservative, and she knows all the numbers pretty much at her fingertips. So we thank you for all the work I know that went into putting this budget together this year.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
All
Well,
right,
I've got a motion.
that's what I was going to ask for next. Closed session is next on our agenda. Do I
I
have a
move-
motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that this meeting be closed under the provisions of the Maryland Open Meetings Act, General Provision, Article Section 3-305B1, to discuss the appointment of officials to the Planning Commission. The reason being because public discussion of candidates' names, qualifications, experience, and background could discourage people from volunteering for public service or compromise their privacy rights.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Mr. Krantz?
This will be the vote to go into closed session. Commissioner Rutledge,
Aye.
Commissioner Chismar,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
and Chair Edding.
Aye.
Okay, we'll be going into closed session, and just please confirm, I don't believe we'll be returning to open session.
We will not be returning to open session except to adjourn, and it is 7:08 PM for closed session.
Let's just give it a moment for the YouTube stream to stop.